A hero is only as good as its villain. We've talked about how to set up your heroes. Now it's time that we talk about how to set up your villains. Hello, extremely intelligent lambs, and welcome back. I'm Peter Wary. Let's get started. So the example I'm going to be using today is Gladiator. Gladiator, for those who have not seen this movie, this video will contain some spoilers about the movie because talking about the villain, it's hard to talk about the villain without talking about what the villain does in this movie. So be warned, if you haven't seen this movie, maybe find another video of mine to watch if you don't want to have the movie spoiled for you. So let's get into this. Basically, the story of Gladiator follows a former general in the Roman army who the new emperor, Commodus, despises him. We will talk about in the scene, we'll talk about why, set up your character, why he despises him. But basically, because of his despise, he kills off Maximus's family. And so then Maximus is left at nothing. And he gets captured and basically turned into a gladiator. So eventually he gets to the courts of Caesar and he sees Commodus and he vows to him,
"And I will have my vengeance."
Basically, that's the story of Maximus Decimus Meridius getting his revenge. The person we're going to be talking about today, well, we could talk about forever about Maximus because he's awesome. I love that movie. But the point that we're going to be talking about today is set up your villain. In one of the opening scenes we see of Commodus, we figure out why he hates Maximus and what type of ruthless man he is. So this is going to kind of break my rule that I set up of in the first 12 minutes you need to set up your main characters, villains, and all that kind of stuff. This is going to kind of break that because the first appearance of him is at exactly 12 minutes or so. But that's not even the scene we're going to be talking about, because while that scene does set up some of his character, it's really later on at a scene that is around like the 30-minute mark that we're actually going to be talking about, where you really see the setup of this character. Now, most of you guys, if you guys are watching this video because it's a movie analysis video talking about setup villains, you probably have run across other channels that have talked about villains before. But one thing they always talk about in those videos is they just put a big emphasis on showing how powerful the villain is. I will show you how powerful this villain is in this video, but I feel like one thing they are ignoring a lot of times is the motivation behind it. You can have a villain powerful, but there's something even greater about knowing why this villain is this way. It makes him so powerful. So that's what mainly I'm going to talk about, is from the same standpoint as setting up your character, your main character, and your hero in the story, the same way you should be setting up your villain. So in this scene, you really see that. But first of all, I'm just going to quickly mention that why, even though this kind of breaks the set up your villain in the first 12-minute rule that we've set, it actually doesn't fully, because the opening of this movie it takes place, you see a big battle. You see the armies of Rome. You see how powerful they are. And you might be saying, okay, so what's the point of that? That's not about the villain. But actually it is about the villain. Because by doing that, you just set up the villain's army. He's going to become Caesar. And as Caesar, he has the Roman army at his disposal. So that means that we actually already set up the villain. But we're doing it in the way of showing the hero. We're saying, look at this army that the hero is commanding. Look how powerful it is. Right? You're like, oh yeah, so it shows how powerful of a general Maximus is. But then it also, when you think about it, it's also set up, this is the army that the villain has. This is the villain's army. So you already are setting up how powerful he is. But now let's just jump straight into that scene. So we start out by, his father has called him to his tent. And you see him walk in. And he's like stroking a statue of his father. And then you hear a voice behind him. And it's his father talking. And his father is saying, are you ready to take up your duties for Rome? And he's like, of course I am. And then his father's like, just making sure you know, you are not going to be the next Caesar. And he's just like, what wiser man is going to take my place? And his father was just like, Maximus. And you have set up in scenes before that he kind of has a hatred towards Maximus, but this is really when you see it. Because through the beginning of the scene, you just see him, like, kind of straight face. He's trying to keep himself together. This is the first time you kind of see, like, a flicker of, like, hatred for his father. And his father's just like, is my decision bothering you? And he's just like, I have been working my whole life to impress you. And every single time I try to impress you, you always go back to Maximus. You always love Maximus more. Why can I not impress you? His father's just like, the reason why you failed as a son is because I failed as a father. It's my fault, not your fault. Don't blame yourself for my problems. So then, his father tries to bring him into an embrace and tries to, like, comfort him and all. But you see that the Commodus was kind of using this as a excuse to get nearby his father. But then he decides that he's actually not. He doesn't need a hug from his father. He's angry at his father. So he chokes his father and kills his father. And thus, before his father got a chance to say anything to anyone else and make it official, he has killed his father, and thus, as his living heir, he is the one who becomes the new emperor. And this is how the scene ends. What can we learn from the scene? Opening up, we see with him, like, with the whole thing of him, like, stroking the statue of his father, you see that he wants his father's love. And you hear later on when he, like, breathes up all those excuses that he's like, why couldn't you love me? He wants his father's love. He really, really wants his father's love. But you see that his father doesn't feel like he's a wise enough man to take over as the new emperor. So he says, I'm going to give it to a wiser man. I'm going to give it to Maximus. He's fought with me through battles. He's done all this. He's a better warrior. One thing I didn't say, but he also brought up, was he says, until the Senate is ready to rule again. And so his father's not just saying that he's going to make Maximus the emperor, but he's going as far as to say that he's going to have Maximus take down that power. Take down it so that while Maximus is going to be the emperor for a little bit, he's very soon going to be stepped down and allow the Senate to take over again and just allow it to be a democracy. So not just on the level of Commodus wanting power, but on the level that he's not just as the person he hates the most getting the power, but then his father wants that person to then take down the option of anyone having that power ever again. So that means he wants his father wants him to be never. Even if he kills Maximus, even if he does any of that, he will never be able to have that power. So you can see the rage in him. He hates his father, but he still is like, he wanted his father's praise, and now this is the last straw. And so guess what he does? He does the thing that makes the most sense, right? Before his father has the chance to put this into law, he kills his father, and thus he becomes the emperor. And thus, he now has the power. And you know what that means? Guess what the first thing he does is? He has Maximus executed. It doesn't work, but he tries to have Maximus executed. Now, we come to the beginning of the story. We have him eventually he goes and kills off Maximus's family, basically making it so he's lost all sense of his love. All sense of his purpose. He's no longer a general. He doesn't have a family anymore. He lost his close friend, the emperor, and everything is just gone for him. And that's where really, like, now we're, like, close to, like, 40 minutes into the movie when this whole thing happens. So this is a very long movie, and the beginning of the movie is just, like, the opening is already in itself a very long movie, and it breaks our rules of, like, first 12 minutes trying to introduce. Now, yes, this is dealing with the first act, which is our second key. We'll talk about that a lot more later on. It breaks down. It kind of breaks the whole. It's setting up all your intro stuff in the first 12 minutes. But it does a really good job. So, let's be putting that aside. Let's see what we can learn. Right? We already talked about what we can learn from this from the scene on what this character is, but what can we learn on how they set up characters? So we already talked about how most people, when they talk about villains, are just talking about how they set up a powerful villain, how to make a villain that's threatening and all. But while this villain is threatening, it's less about his threateningness. It's less about him being threatening and more about him being reason behind. You can see he would do anything to kill Maximus. He would do anything to see Maximus dead. And so because of that, we learn a lot more about him. Because as I was talking about at the beginning of the story, the fact of the matter is, while having a powerful villain, a lot of people have complaints with some Marvel villains and a lot of villains who are just bland and powerful, right? Yes, Sauron is a very powerful villain. He's a very powerful villain. But a villain that you can see his love of power, right? If you read the Silmarillion, you know more about Sauron, you know why he wants this power and all that kind of stuff, and how his master, Morgoth, was the reason for some of this. But, as a general, just comparing this villain to Sauron, while I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings, I can see why you could put Sauron lower, because Sauron is powerful. He wants power. But a lot of villains want power. This villain, Commodus wants power, but there's a deeper, hatred for Maximus. There's something driving him more. It's not just that he wants power. And that's the thing about setting up a good villain. Wow, I could have talked about, the Lord of the Rings. In the opening scene of Lord of the Rings, how you set up how powerful Sauron is. And you kind of actually come to the thing where you kind of don't, because he gets kind of killed off in a way in the opening scene, so you kind of shows how powerful other people are. But it also shows how powerful the ring is. So you could use that as an example. But the point is that we're using Gladiator as an example because it shows a villain who is threatening, because he owns a whole army now. He killed off the main character's family. He does all this terrible stuff. He runs the gladiator fights. He has the ability to, just with a thumbs down, he can have them all killed if he doesn't like the gladiator fight. He's powerful, but he's also threatening because his driving factor, what's driving him. Sometimes it's powerful to have villains who have no, you don't know why they're doing this, and it sometimes make it powerful. Like with the Joker, he's a very intimidating villain for not for the reason that he has this deep hatred for Batman or something like that. It's that he, as Alfred says, some people just want to watch the world burn. That's not what happened here. He does want to see. He is a very evil guy, wants to see power and all that. But Commodus is more so, his hatred for Maximus is what drives him through all these movies. His love of power drives him. So that's what we can learn from this. Sometimes setting up just a powerful villain can be good in some movies, but also depends on what movie you're talking about. Because some movies, the power is just having a powerful villain. Like in Lord of the Rings, it works. If you had Sauron go to therapy, it would make no sense. If you had Sauron have all these emotions, it would make no sense, because the whole point of Sauron as a villain, it depends on your definition of villains. Sauron as a villain is a powerful villain, a threatening villain, but in a different way than Commodus is a threatening villain. In a different way that the Joker is a threatening villain. Villains, while heroes, yes, they are also broad. Heroes a lot of times fall into a little bit closer of a category of a hero is the hero. They are good. They want good for people and all that kind of stuff. Villains can kind of be put in the category of they a lot of times want power, unless it's Joker and characters like that who really don't care about power, they care about chaos. But they a lot of times can be a lot more broad, they can be a lot different, and it depends on the movies. Voldemort is a completely different type of villain than Commodus is. Different characters need different villains. This is one of the biggest things that again, I will have whole videos talking about the Joker and all, but when people say that they should make the Joker dead serious, that's not true. Because the whole thing about the Joker is that you have Batman, the broody, dark Batman. And you should have your Joker, while you should not make him a goofball, he's the Joker. He needs to and this is something I want to do if I ever play the Joker, is play him more like if a clown became a serial killer. This Joker is having fun with his murders. He's he's like giving laughing gas. It's probably one of the most threatening things that the Joker has, because he's making people die of laughter. And then, like, imagine just walking into that scene, and just imagine a scene in a movie where the police officers walk into the scene and they just see a bunch of bodies all over the floor with big grins on their faces. Like, that would be disturbingly awesome. It would be disturbing, but Commodus and villains like that wouldn't work with. The whole thing about the Joker is that he's the opposite of Batman. Batman is really, like, broody and dark and all. The Joker is dark, but he has a weird sense of humor. He likes torturing people. He likes killing people, and he thinks it's fun that way. He does it in fun ways. So making the Joker too dark, and I think this is something they need to learn more with the Joker, is that he's supposed to be the opposite of Batman. You should not make him dark too. You need to make him crazy, outlandish, insane, murderous psychopath who has fun being a murderer. What is your thoughts? Do you think that villains can be put into a smaller category like heroes sometimes? Or do you think villains are, as I said, broader, and it's hard to put them into villains are one category because villains are a bigger category unto itself? I also just want to quickly mention, I didn't say set up your villains. I did say set up your opposing force, because not always in movie do you have to have a villain. Some movies are better when you don't have a villain. Including movies like Frozen would have been better if you didn't have Han suddenly become the villain at the end of the movie. It would have stayed the same movie, because honestly what Han did is he just slowed down what was going to happen. That's all he did. Yes, it made it so it gave Anna a chance to save Elsa's life and all, but the point is, some movies you don't need a villain. So some movies you don't actually need a proper villain as much as you just need the opposing force. The opposing force is what's stopping the good guys from stopping the hero from getting where they need to be. It's getting them from one place to another. And you might say, hey, wait, so you just said that Han, but that's what Han did. Like, isn't he a good villain? No, because the fact of the matter is, what the real villain of that movie was the separation between the sisters. And the Han was just there, but it was really about them making up and learning to don't let each other in again. Sometimes you do have stuff like, in some movies, kind of like Frozen, where you have the villain is only there to further the growth of, and actually all movies should do this, the villain is only there to further the growth of the hero and get him from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie as a different person. But a lot of villains can actually be friended while doing that. So overall, guys, tell me your thoughts below. Do you guys agree with this? If you guys have any, comment below what's your thoughts on this. Again, I'm going to bring this up again because I haven't brought up it a little bit now, but if you guys haven't done this yet, please try to do it. Try for 10, invite 5. What I mean by that is, let's put it this way, right? We have 40 subscribers now, as of the time we're recording this video. If each of you guys invite 5 friends, that is 200 new people who come, because 40 times 5. Each person invites 5, becomes 200, right? Then all you have to do is that you sit back, and those 5 friends that you invited have the chance of each inviting their 5 friends, right? And guess what? Now we're at 1,000 people. Those 200 people just invited 5 people, and that became 1,000 people. And now we just reached the big surprise that comes to 1,000. With the 200, that's already above the 100 milestone where I'm gonna answer the 100 questions of you guys. You get the point? And then those 1,000 people, those 200 people can now sit back, and those 1,000 people can invite 5 friends, and that becomes 5,000. You get the point? It just goes up and up and up. It really doesn't take that much work. You guys probably know at least 5 people who might like this channel. And if you can manage to show it to 10 people and get 5 people to subscribe, great. If you really can't, that's okay. But at least try it. I talked about in the last episode about Balharli, is that if you like something, it's more likely that you're going to want to have people find other people who like it. You're going to be like, hey, I like this. Show it to your friends because like, hey, maybe you will like this too. Same here, right? If you know people who might like this channel, just share it with them. That's the big thing. So if you really can't do the 5 friends, or especially if you can't do the 10 friends, then try for at least 1 friend. If you really have to. Just try to see if you can know, even if you can't think of anyone, right? Maybe a couple weeks down the road, you just walk down the road and you come upon someone and you guys have a conversation, and then they casually mention that they're, wanting into filmmaking or something like that, and you're like, hey, I know of a channel that's about this. And there you go. You just invited someone. We'll see how this channel grows. It's like, if you really don't want to do that and you really just want to sit back and watch these videos, feel free to just sit back and watch it. It would just help a lot if you guys know of anyone. It's less of you guys. It's not a requirement. It's more of something that I'm suggesting that if you guys know of anyone, feel free to invite those people because we want to grow this channel more. And again, as I mentioned before, the bigger this channel gets, the more creative minds we can spark. So thank you guys for watching. This has been the Movie Night Reviewer, Peter Wary, signing off.